So what do you think your main focus is with what you do? Are you a da'i? Are you a scholar? Are you a debater? I've seen your content for a while. We spoke before. I remember I reached out to you before I went on this podcast. I think after October 7th, that's when way more people started talking about Zionism. And I've been talking about it for a couple of years now, but that's when like more people were looking to me to speak about the subject. And I went on, actually, I'll just be honest about it. I went on Bradley Martin and Sarah Safari's podcast. It's called the Mommy and Daddy podcast. And I think it was like October 8th. It was like literally right after October 7th. And I wanted to make sure I had all my talking points down and I wanted to make sure I was sharp and everything. So I reached out to Daniel and I'm like, I need to go in front. And we had a conversation. I was making sure that I knew the right facts and I was saying the right names of the hospitals and everything, and that I got all the dates and everything correct. And then I went on the podcast and it was just boom, 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 boom. And you were the one that I reached out to be sharp with the debating, because I've seen you debate quite a bit. I've seen you debate Christians. I've seen you debate atheists. I've seen you debate enemies of Islam. And I'm just wondering, like, what would you consider your background? What do you call yourself?
Yeah, the generic term is da'i, like caller to Islam. So I do a lot of different types of content, like debating is what I've been doing really a lot of for the past 2 years. And that's really effective, I think, because it's interesting. People like conflict. People like to see which arguments or which ideas are going to win out. So there's a competitive aspect to it. But I also write articles, write books. I teach classes online. I do like shorter streams or shorter videos where I analyze different topics in politics and religion. So it's like muslimskeptic.com is the site that I have, and also it's on YouTube. For now, it might get banned at any time because I don't know if you heard, but the ADL targeted me.
I did see that. I want to say we stand with you with that. The fact that the ADL targeted you, I think it's a badge of honor now. At first, when I saw this image of my name being written on an IDF missile, I was really taken aback and I was kind of shocked. But then after a while, I'm like, you know what? This means I'm doing something right. If the ADL has to write a hit piece on you specifically, I think that it's a sign that you're doing something right.
Inshallah, may Allah accept it.
You seemed a little nervous?
I was shocked too. I mean, I was shocked. Like, why would the ADL specifically, like, they could mention me in an article, but have an article just about me? It's just bizarre, like, because, it's not like I have a massive following of millions of people. I mean, total, maybe it's close to 1 million, but for the ADL specifically to write a hit piece on me, it came out of nowhere. But the thing about it is it's completely bizarre because what they're accusing me of is I'm taking passages of Jewish scripture out of context, and that makes me an anti-Semite.
Did you read the Talmud? Is that what it was?
Yeah, like in some of my debates, like I'm quoting passages from the Talmud. Like I recently had a debate with a Jewish scholar, and prior to that I gave a talk at a college in New York on Judaism. It was supposed to be a debate like between me and a rabbi, but the rabbi backed out and they didn't bring a replacement. So it was just me talking about Judaism. And I bring these passages from the Talmud and also the Bible. And actually, the Jewish students there, they loved it. Like they, not all of them, but there were a couple that were like, yeah, well, you really opened our eyes. Like everything you said, we're fact checking you as you're speaking, and everything that you're citing from the Talmud is accurate. But you opened our eyes. We have to do some soul searching. So that was their response.
Wow.
But,
so they thought they were going to see a debate, but instead Jews just signed up to go to Talmud study with a Muslim.
Yeah,
why did the rabbi back out? Did they tell you?
They didn't give a reason, but I assume it's just they know they can't respond to some of these passages. It's like really outrageous stuff that you find.
Can you tell me the one that can you tell me some that really got them angry, or one that shocked the one that opened up the Jewish students' eyes?
Well, one, I'll tell you the funny aspect of it, because there was a huge attempt to cancel the whole event. Like the Jewish students were trying to cancel the event, and they were saying this Daniel, he's an anti-Semite, etc.
How they do, yeah.
Yeah, how they do. But then the university administration even spoke out. Like the president of that college, Queens College, came out and wrote an email to the students and said that, this event is happening. It has this speaker, Daniel Haqiqatjou. I find his views personally repulsive. Like he condemned me by name. But, in the interest of free speech, this is the Muslim students, they're having him, so we're going to allow the event to take place. But the university actually brought a lot of security for the event. And there was maybe 5 or 6 security guards in that hall where I was speaking. And they even assigned one police officer, like campus police, to stand like within 6 feet of me the whole time, like a bodyguard. And what was funny is that most of the security, they were black, they're African American. And then there are like these passages in the Talmud that talk about the word like kushi, kushi. So what is kushi? It means like black person. And the Talmud is basically saying that black people have the curse of Ham. Like there was this son of Noah named Ham who was on the ark, Noah's ark, and then he committed an act of like fornication or sexual intercourse, basically, and then that was forbidden. So he was cursed for that, and he was cursed with black skin. So that's in the Talmud.
What?
Yeah.
There's.
Yeah,
okay.
that's and also with certain rituals, like in certain rituals, if you're a Kushi, you can't do certain rituals in Judaism.
Like what?
And you can't have certain positions, like certain rituals in the temple, like certain rituals in the temple.
What rituals in the temple?
Like the details, I'll have to look exactly what the details are, but we can pull up the passages if you want.
Yeah, so
this is
that's proof like, from the Talmud right there.
The funny thing was that I could see like the security guards like crossing their arms, they're not happy about what they're seeing from the Talmud, and then the Jewish students were sitting there like trying to look straight ahead.
They're like trying to do BLM or something. It's funny because I get in debates with people all the time. There's this Twitter page, Kira Won't Miss, and I was telling him or her, I don't know, in a group chat that Judaism is an ethnicity almost more than it is a religion. They bind together by their ethnicity. It's supposed to be traced down to the specific tribe, and you can only be Jewish if your mother is Jewish, like ethnically. You never hear about people reverting to Judaism or converting to Judaism. It's more of an ethnicity and a race than it is a faith.
Yeah, you can convert to Judaism, but it's like a long process. I just recently was talking to a Jewish scholar on my own channel, and he was explaining that you can convert, but we don't seek conversion. Like it's not like Islam where you're like people are doing dawah and they're calling to Islam and saying, this is the benefits of becoming Muslim. This is the truth of Islam. They don't do that. They don't have dawah. But you can convert. But even if you do convert to Judaism, you still won't have the same status as a ethnic Jew, like according to the religion. So when we're like, that's the thing, like I'm only talking about what the religion actually teaches, what the Talmud actually says, what the Bible actually says, what some of the top rabbis in history have said. But obviously not all Jews accept Jewish teachings. Not all Jews will have this kind of racist view. And I always put that disclaimer because, and that's what's so shocking about the ADL saying I'm anti-Semite, as if like I have this animosity towards Jews. But you're like a convert to Islam. There are Jewish converts to Islam. And if Judaism is an ethnicity, there are Jews who have converted to Islam and now they're Muslim Jews.
And in Islam, they have the same, they don't have any different privileges. They're all the same. It's not like you can't do certain rituals if you're a revert. If you're a Muslim, you're Muslim, simple halas. But what can they not do? What can Kufi black people or the Ham black people not do in Judaism?
So let me pull up the passage.
How are you able to read the Talmud? Isn't it really hard to interpret? Every time I try to talk about it or read it, it's like, oh, these are debates. They're just conversations. It's not actual scripture. Like it's very it's hard to figure out.
Well, that's what they claim, but it's considered the oral law. So they believe there's an oral law and a written law. The written law is the Torah, or the Hebrew Bible, and then the written law or the oral law is the Talmud. They believe it was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, and Moses didn't write it down. He just conveyed it orally, and it's just been passed down until today. That's their claim. It's a claim that is not backed up by anything, but it's still considered, just because it's like the rabbis talking to each other, like in the Mishnah and the Gemara, that doesn't mean that it's not from God. Like they believe it's actually from God, even though they won't admit it. Like that's the apologetic. Like when you point out some of this anti-black racism or anti-Arab racism, or the idea that Jewish people are considered to be the chosen people of God, they'll say that, oh, this is just debating, rabbis debating, it doesn't mean anything. But that's just an apologetic. According to traditional Judaism, the Talmud is the most important source of Jewish law because it's considered to be the oral law from God.
So is that true, the stuff, like, I don't really want to repeat all of it, it is Ramadan, I'm in Medina, but like the stuff that the Talmud says about like 3-year-olds and Goy and all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there are some inaccuracies, because I see on Twitter people share like these long lists with, oh, did you know in Judaism? And it cites like all of these different quotes and passages. Some of that stuff is actually inaccurate. Like there are some fake quotes and fake citations.
To make Judaism look bad.
Yeah, it might be actually, Mossad actually might be putting that out. It might be actually Zionists putting that out to say that, to condition people to thinking like, oh, this is just fake stuff whenever they see quotations from the Talmud. So you have to be careful. Like everything that I cite is backed up, and I usually link the website, like it's a specific Jewish website, Sefaria, that has all these texts. But like the stuff about the Kushi, like I don't know if there's share screen, but I can just read it to you.
Yeah, you can do. Either one works.
Oh, there is share screen.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom, that you could see share screen in the bottom middle.
Oh, okay. So where's the choice?
Welcome to Discord. It's better than Zoom and whatever the other people debate you on.
Yeah, I usually use Zoom or StreamYard. Where's the tab? All right, got it. Can you see?
Yeah.
The text? Yeah, so concerning the Kushi, the Gihor, the Lavkan, the Kepeya, the dwarf, the deaf mute, the imbecile, the drunk, and those with ritually pure marks, their conditions disqualify a person from performing the temple service. So like there are different temple services, like certain sacrifices that you have to make. Like everyone's talking about the red heifers nowadays. Like that's the kind of sacrifice that you sacrifice the animal, then you burn the animal until you get its ashes. So certain services like that.
So we can know for certain that Jamal and DeQuavius are not going to bring the jaw. It's not going to be a black guy who does the cow sacrifice and summons the Antichrist, correct?
According to Becharot 45b.
Okay, I'm good. Wait, so I'm good because I'm part black. Am I considered Kushi?
I don't know. I guess so. Yeah, if you're part black, yeah, you would be.
So wait, the chat. It's not going to be me. Okay, I beat the allegations. Great. Wow. Okay, I wonder what the other temple services are, but we can learn that another time. Have you ever lost a debate? Every time I've seen your debates, and I think you've gained a lot of credibility over the past 6 months or so. I saw you pop up, and then I saw you get some criticism. Wallahi, I don't even remember what it was for. And then I remember you standing outside of Masjid debating somebody, and then I think you cooked him. What was that about? You were standing outside of Masjid debating somebody about what was that about? Yeah,
that was Sohaib Webb. So Sohaib Webb is one of these imams. He studied in Egypt for a while at Azhar University, if you know it. It's like a big Islamic university, one of the oldest, if not the oldest. And so he was this very prominent American imam, like back in circa 2008, 2009. And he was so prominent that he would be featured on like nightly news or like Good Morning America. Like they would invite him to programs like that nationally. And he would say, my name is William Webb. He's a convert too, from Oklahoma. But at some point, like he became like very liberal, and he started like promoting like very liberal things. And that was part of what our debate was about. But basically, he kind of has lost that popularity that he used to have 10 or 15 years ago. But recently, like when Andrew Tate converted to Islam, he posted something against that, or something critical of that, like, oh, we're gonna wait and see, Andrew Tate, he's like not a good person, and we'll see what his Islam really means. It was kind of like that kind of attitude, and so I made a video on it. I was like, this is wrong. Like, why does he have this kind of cold harshness towards Andrew Tate, but he has a really soft attitude with people who are like really deviant or like really messed up? And one of the examples that I brought is that he basically praised this woman who you can say quote unquote hijabi, who appeared in Playboy and was interviewed in Playboy. So, I
saw that. It's like she's kind of like a goth satanic girl, like hijabi half off. Like she's like, "Ooh, I'm stripping with my hijabi" type of thing. Yeah, I saw that.
Something like that. But he like praised it, and he like linked to the Playboy article, which you shouldn't be doing as an imam, let alone just a normal Muslim. So he.
So if he's going to be critical of Andrew Tate, then he should look at himself and what he's.
Like why are you so critical of Andrew Tate, but you have this kind of soft attitude towards people who are doing. Who have a history of bad things, and they don't apologize for it. At least Andrew Tate, like he is just a new Muslim.
He repented.
And he wants to change, and so it's like it's a big double standard. I called him out for it. So he comes to Houston, and he's at a masjid, and he's giving a talk. But for some reason, in the middle of the talk, he starts calling me out. And he's saying, "Oh, Daniel, why doesn't Daniel man up and come here and talk to me? And he can just make videos. He's like a keyboard warrior. Bring your cameras,
I know. I saw you outside the masjid, and it was like 100 brothers outside there, and you're just debating this guy face to face. I was surprised to see you like outside, like really, confronting someone like that.
Yeah, because he called me out. Yeah. He called me out and said, question my manhood. So I was like, send me the location. Like, tell me where and when.
Send me the Addy. I'm going to pull up. Bro, you really pulled up. He dropped the Addy and you pulled up. You slid.
Exactly. So, but it's funny. It was really funny because I brought up the fact that he's like defending Playboy or promoting it. And he just didn't have a response. Like all he needed to say is like, okay, I made a mistake. That was a stupid thing to do. You're right. That's not something like a proper Muslim should be doing. But he just doubled down. So it made him look really bad. And then he just...
Yeah, there's no excuse for that. That Playboy shoot, I don't want to show it up during Ramadan, but like that shoot is very obvious. You could take one look at. Also, Playboy is probably run by Zionists. I don't have to check, but I guess if you look at the Wikipedia, I bet Playboy was created by you-know-whos. And also the fact, like, if you look at the image, she's like half dressed and she's not wearing the hijabi properly. It was definitely, the shoot was designed to go and disrespect the purity that hijabis are supposed to have. But I've seen you have several other debates. I want to also talk about your book. I was in London recently with Muhammad Ajab. I was at a bookstore that was in the masjid, and I saw your book there. What was the book called again?
Modernist Menace to Islam.
Is that... What is can you describe the book a little? I want to read it. I didn't get a chance to yet.
Yeah, so it's about this attack by modernism against Islam. Like modernism is a philosophy that destroyed Christianity, basically. Like when we look at Christianity or even Judaism or Hinduism, all these religions were attacked by this idea of modernism. Modernism says that, we need to embrace the human mind and reason and science and innovate and constantly be changing and updating and innovating. Whereas religion says, we need to stick to our books, what God has revealed and what our forefathers have practiced. And so modernism says, no, this is backwards. This is holding society back. You have to cut the chains of religion and accept progress, constant progress. And there's this kind of idea that people 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago were so backwards and they were so immoral and irrational. And then as humanity continues to go through time, it advances and progresses and people became more rational and more moral and more sophisticated. This is like progressivism. So this destroys like your religious belief, because if you accept progressivism, then you have to basically say that, like the average Joe on the street knows more than, my prophet did 1,400 years ago, or more than Jesus 2,000 years ago, or more than Moses or the Hindu sages or whatever. So this idea of progressivism is kind of embedded in what people understand history to be. It's kind of like we're all indoctrinated, if you grow up in the West or even in the East, with this kind of progressive view of history, and that's what really erodes and destroys people's faith over time unless you counteract it. And all of these things, like, oh, Muslims are backwards because of the way they treat their women, Muslims are backwards because of the way they dress, Muslims are backwards because of the laws that they have, and they don't drink alcohol, they don't do drugs, they don't gamble, etc. This is backward. Like, why are you letting religion dictate your life? We have science and reason now. That's the answer they claim. But like, look at the world that we're living in. It's like a dystopia. Look at the filth that we're surrounded by. Like, where has science and reason really led humanity? It's just constant ills, like constant destruction around us. Like, the people can't even get married. Like, you can't even find someone to love you and be your faithful partner. Like, everyone has this kind of huge body count and all these problems. That's coming from modernism. That's coming like everything in red pill that people talk about, everything in with the degeneracy of modern society, that's all coming from modernism and this kind of turning your back on God and believing that the human mind and science are the answer. Like, that's the modern idol that people are worshiping. So how do we counteract that? Like, how do we really debunk that idea and break that idol and show that no, religion and believing in God and following the prophets, that's the true answer? And then when you get to that point, like, you take the God pill, then you're in a position to take the Islam pill. Like, why is Islam the only true religion? And then you prove that. And there's a lot of evidence that you can talk about, and I debate that as well.
You literally just described my journey to Islam, like word for word. This idea that progressiveness is good and that you should be able to do anything, and that freedom and acceptance and all this stuff, and then kind of embracing red pill when you realize that feminism makes men simps. And so it's kind of a reaction to that, and like, oh, well, I need 50 women all the time, and I'm a man and all this stuff, and I'm a real man if I cheat all the time. And then you realize how empty and how unfulfilling that life is, and how everything that we keep trying to adapt and all these ideologies that we invent to go and cope with the modern society, all of it is unfulfilling, and it leaves a hole in your heart. And then you find your way to God, and then you find your way, okay, well, what's the one book that hasn't been corrupted in 1400 years? What's the one perfect prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And all the prophets were perfect, but the message was diluted and changed until Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until he delivered the perfect message. And that's how I got to this point. That describes literally my journey exactly. So I would definitely want to read that book. I'm curious hearing you describe that. Have you ever heard about the Unabomber? Yeah, the Unabomber talks about that problem. Like, in the Unabomber manifesto, he talks about how science and progressiveness, he talks about liberal ideology, and how university professors and the constant need to adapt, and how technology is pushing people away from what their true self is supposed to be. But he was MK Ultra, and he was never really, I don't think he was even fully capable of embracing Islam or discovering it, even though he had an extremely high IQ. I think that somebody like him, Ted Kaczynski, who ended up, he mailed bombs and did terrible things, but also his diagnosis of the problems in the West were extremely accurate, but he never took that final step. Do you think that he would have ever found Islam, or what do you think about his manifesto?
I think that people invited him to Islam when he was in prison, but ultimately he didn't accept it. I think he was like very autistic, and I don't know why. He might have had some kind of issues, but he ultimately did not accept Islam, from what I can tell. But in terms of technology and the Industrial Revolution and industrialization being a disaster for the human race, I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth to how technology continues to destroy human life. And it will eventually lead to, like, if things continue, it'll eventually lead to the extinction of the human race. Because if you look at the way that technology works, a big problem is centralization of power. Because as we become more technologically advanced, like, who's controlling these technologies? Like the Tesla, for example. I always was a fan of the Tesla, and wow, look at a cool electric car. And then I realized that, wait, the Tesla is it's like having an iPhone, basically. If Apple wants to shut down your iPhone centrally, they can do that. If Tesla gets a call, or Elon gets a call from the White House and says that, oh, we're in lockdown, or we don't like this particular person, he's an extremist, we want to limit his ability to travel, Elon can from his headquarters just shut your car down, right? So that's centralization of power. Having a smartphone, like imagine, or a smart house, like this idea of a smart house, like that's a dystopia. Like if you have a smart house at any time, if the government believes that you're stepping out of line, you have some wrong thoughts, some wrong ideas, maybe you're too red-pilled, you're too God-pilled, then they can shut it all down. Like who would want to put their whole lives in the control of a centralized government? But the thing is that it also affects like children, like because of genetic engineering. Like genetic engineering, you have things like genetically modifying children, these designer babies, like you can customize your baby through genetic engineering. Right now, it seemed like they always push it like in these liberal terms, like liberalism in the sense of, oh, you have the freedom and the choice to choose who to be your baby, who to be your child. Like, isn't that great? You have extra options. They offer it as like this freedom that you have, but then it becomes mandated. No, you have to. The government will determine like, okay, your baby has these kinds, will have this kind of personality maybe because of genetic proclivity to being like, he's going to be more masculine. And we don't want masculinity because masculinity is associated with aggressiveness. It's associated with non-social behaviors, asocial behaviors. Therefore, people who have this particular masculine gene, that's not allowed. Those babies can't be born. Like that kind of oversight and control of even birth rates, that's on the horizon. Even artificial wombs, that's on the horizon. Look at Neuralink, look at mind control. And this kind of, at first, what Elon is going to offer humanity with Neuralink is like, okay, you can play Mario Kart with your mind. Like you can type essays and articles and you can do all your work just mentally without using any interface like a keyboard or mouse. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? That's what they first marketed like a amazing product for you to buy. But then it becomes mandatory and it becomes a form of control. Like the smartphone is the perfect example. Like the smartphone, oh, you can do so much on your phone, but now the smartphone is like a spy tool. Like the government can literally just listen to all your conversations, not just through your phone calls or through your chats, but they can remotely turn on the mic and listen in. If you're having like an IRL conversation with someone, they can listen into that by just turning on the mic. Like that's crazy. Like that's the level of centralization of control that is possible when you have the technology. So some of these things Ted Kaczynski talked about. Obviously, he was a terrorist and he committed really terrible crimes. But those ideas, I think, are worth thinking about.
100%. Like, and it's almost the more you talk about it, the more you become aware that these people who control technology, like they don't really want the progression of the human race. They just want all of the power and control. They want to be gods worshipped on earth that are able to control the rest of humanity like wage slaves and be able to connect their minds up to technology and make them do whatever you want. If there's another lockdown, like maybe they turn off your car and then you can only leave the house to get groceries from certain hours before, your social credit or your grocery credits expire. And that's the world that we're getting to. And I think that Islam is the strongest ideology and the strongest group of people that's really fighting against that, because everything that you read in the Quran, it's anti that and it's pro-humanity. And when you realize that they don't want you to have kids, they don't want you to be happy, they don't want you to have a family, they don't even want you to believe in what gender you are. They want you to be completely confused and dependent upon them forever. And when you understand that, inevitably you have to turn to Islam.
Yeah, absolutely. The gender stuff is just the beginning. Like people are like, oh, people have the freedom to choose their gender, like whatever gender that you really are under there. You can now express it through these kinds of pharmaceuticals, like you have hormone therapy, you can have surgeries, but like that's just the beginning. Like what if you want to be like a different species, like you don't want to be human anymore, you want to be like a wolf or maybe like a elf or an alien, like that kind of transformation bodily transformation becomes more and more possible with advances in technology, advances in genetics. And that's why I mean, like, this is going to lead to the destruction of the human race. Like, people associate the destruction of the human race like with a nuclear war. Like, people are just going to have there's going to be a nuclear war in the future that wipes out the human race. But what if there's not a nuclear war, but there's this kind of genetic engineering, or this kind of transhumanism where people are being transformed through psychologically, neurologically, pharmacologically. That's like the more likely extinction of the human race, because we're no longer human. Like, are you really a human if you've like completely changed the human mind through drugs or through Neuralink or these kinds of technologies, or AI now, you being implanted into people and you've changed your body, like you've uploaded your mind to the cloud? Like, is that really a human being anymore? So that's like the extinction of the human race.
It's incredible talking about it now, because every movie in the 80s was kind of warning us of that, but that's the reality that's coming faster than people realize. And well, do you think it's inevitable? Because sometimes we talk about the red heifer, we talk about how the jaw is coming. Is all this prophesized? Is there any point in trying to avoid the destruction of humanity if it's just going to happen?
No, you have to fight against it. And there's a hadith that comes to mind from the Prophet ﷺ, that he says in this hadith that if you're in the middle of planting like a palm tree, you're in the middle of planting a palm tree. Have you heard of this?
No.
Have you? You're basically planting a palm tree, like a sapling, and the end of the world comes, like the end of the Qiyamah, end of the world comes. Keep planting it, like continue to plant that tree. And it's significant because a palm tree doesn't really bear fruit until like a whole generation. Like, a lot of time, years and years have to pass before a palm tree grows to the size where it can actually give you dates and fruit. But this idea that the day of judgment, like the end of the world has come, like I'm seeing it, and the Prophet ﷺ is saying, well, keep doing the productive work, like keep doing what you need to do, what you are supposed to do as a Muslim, even until like the last moment. Like, don't quit. So we should never have this kind of complacency. We should never say like, oh, well, it's going to happen, so let's just sit back. Yeah, things are going to happen. We don't know if the end of the world is going to come tomorrow, or it's going to come in 100 years or 1,000 years. Only Allah knows. We have to keep doing the work that is required of us and fighting for the sake of Allah, fighting for the truth, speaking the truth, helping others, calling to Islam. Like, that's, and spreading love, as you say, like love speech. That's part of what Muslims should be involved with all the way up until the end.
Let's go. And actually, for the first time, I read the 7 destructive sins. I was reading the Quran yesterday in the Masjid in Medina. Very privileged to really dissect the Quran. And one of the major 7 deadly sins is turning your back against the enemy in warfare. Obviously, that came from the Prophet ﷺ, but it makes a lot of sense. It's like I think you can just simplify it and say that it's cowardice, is cowering away and letting the enemy win. No matter what, to the final breath, you have to keep on fighting. You can never let these Satanists, you can't let them win no matter what. So we just have to continue fighting, and there's no point in having like a doomsday type of attitude towards the world, because the only thing you're supposed to do, even if it is doomed, is continue to fight regardless. But I saw I want to ask you about this, because there's a lot of people, it's refreshing speaking to you, because I don't find a lot of people that seem to have a similar philosophy. Obviously, most Muslims do, but I saw you debated Destiny quite a bit. What do you think about his outlook on life? Because he's getting a lot of mainstream press now, and I think it's just because he's siding with Israel, and the other Zionists at Israeli Wire, like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, these people, they're only allowing him to debate essentially because they're just platforming him because they can agree about the Israel issue. And they both have obviously completely sold out to Netanyahu. Jordan Peterson famously said, "Give him hell," talking about the Palestinians. But what do you think about Destiny, and how was that debate?
Destiny is really loved by the establishment. Like, he's part of this kind of red tube group where they are loved by the establishment, and probably they're getting paid. Like, they're getting paid like by the Democratic Party, for example. Recently, probably Destiny is getting paid by the Zionists. He's getting paid by the Israeli lobby. And they really love Destiny because he talks fast and he can speak coherently. He can like work his way around arguments, and that's like that makes him promoted. Like they're gonna keep promoting him, and even though I think maybe now less so because he's gaining a reputation by just of just being a Wikipedia warrior. Like
Joe Rogan said that today. Joe Rogan said like he just reads Wikipedia articles. He's ridiculous, and I think Joe Rogan is close to Islam too. But continue. Sorry.
Yeah, inshallah he becomes Muslim, but yeah, that's the. So if he gets more of that kind of reputation, then he's probably gonna fall out of favor. But all he does is parrot establishment talking points. Like, he's not very complicated. Whatever is like the mainstream establishment talking point, he is just going to repeat it. And he's going to use these kinds of, they're essentially tricks to try to undermine in a debate scenario, alternative narratives. And he's very good at that. He's good at red herrings, like putting ideas and questions into the conversation that actually don't, if you really think about them, they don't really make sense, or they don't actually support his argument, but they just distract the conversation.
Yeah.
So
but hold on, are you saying, hold on, are you insinuating that Muslims are, and you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. So so he's, that's what he's good for, and he's kind of played that role. And
so you think he's paid? You think he's paid directly by the Democratic Party?
I mean, it's possible. Like, I think it wouldn't surprise me if that came out. He made comments recently, right? That he.
I think that was sarcasm. I'm not sure. I think he was.
You think it was sarcasm?
I think
it was hard to tell if that was sarcastic.
I saw that. I think he was trying to sarcastically talk about something that's true. Like, I think that he actually is in Discord servers with a bunch of Zionists, and he's probably getting in those Telegram groups I've certainly seen where like IDF soldiers and stuff like that will post Palestinian dead babies and stuff like that, astaghfirullah. And I think he's like talking about it ironically to kind of disguise what's true. I think he's in those groups whatsoever. There's no point in really guessing about that too much. But who else do you think could come to Islam next? Because I don't know if a guy like him ever would, even though, but I'm sure may Allah got him regardless. Do you think that somebody like, I've seen a lot of people are talking about issues that we've been speaking about for a long time. Andrew Schultz said today on his podcast that Ben Shapiro should change the Daily Wire to Israeli Wire. Andrew Schultz, like a mainstream comedian who sells out arenas, is talking about Israel. You could see Joe Rogan, even though he had Kid Rock on his podcast about 2 weeks ago, and Kid Rock was saying that they should just nuke Gaza, like he literally meant that. Joe Rogan is now saying that what he thinks is going on is genocide, and may Allah bless him too for finally speaking up, because most celebrities are silent. DJ Khaled, for example, very famously, probably the most famous Palestinian in the world, hasn't said a word because he's getting paid by Zionist music label executives. Do you think that more people are going to come there? The reason that Islam is the fastest growing religion is because a lot of these TikTok girls, you're seeing like a lot of these they, them, blue hair type of people, like the Destiny type of audience. They're seeing the atrocities that Israel is committing right now. And then they look into Palestine, they look into Islam, and they start reading the Quran, and they revert. Do you think anyone big like Andrew Tate, someone like that, will come soon?
Well, I was surprised that you said Joe Rogan. That'd be great. That would be really big if he became Muslim. But he's the biggest name that I can think of right now. Who else is thinking about being Muslim? Like, who else is on the radar?
I think Joe Rogan is getting close because he's an honest guy. I think he's genuine. And I think people who are, who have an open mind and like are genuinely curious about the world and want to seek truth, they end up towards Islam. And I think him talking about what's going on in Israel. Also, he has this thing called Sober October, which is a month of sobriety. And it is very similar to Ramadan, actually, the month that we have now. And also his morals, they align pretty close with that. So I think it's possible. But also, I want to mention that before we did the stream,
Patrick Bet David. I was hoping that Patrick Bet David would become Muslim, but
what is he, Christian?
He might. Yeah, he's Christian. Like, he born again Christian, but he has that kind of, even maybe more than Joe Rogan, he has this kind of open-minded attitude. Like, he's he's willing to talk to Muslims. He's willing to think about these kinds of ideas. He cares about God a lot. That's like really probably more than Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan doesn't talk about being religious at all, right? But Patrick Bet David, like, that's really one of the main themes that he often talks about is being religious, is Christianity. And it's those people, a lot of like those kinds of sincere Christians that they really care about God, like they often will become Muslim. So like in your own experience too, but Patrick Bet David is another one.
Yeah, I'd actually be interested for Patrick by David to look at that. In the Quran today, I was reading passages in the beginning. It's not in the Quran specifically, but they were writing about Jesus, or Isa, peace be upon him, and they were talking about how, like, even in the Bible, because we consider the gospel scripture, it talks about how Matthew was talking about how Jesus went to the mountain and prayed, and then what it said in the passage is like, how would, if Jesus is God, how would he pray to God? Like simple things like that. I would like to see him try to figure out these questions. And obviously, what's going on right now in Israel has woken up, I think, more people than ever. I think that this is probably the most amount of people noticing ever. Can you agree?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like the PR disaster for Israel is completely unprecedented. Like there's no going back. Like all of the things that they've been working for years has come crumbling down, basically. They can't get past this PR disaster. And that's why I think they're just trying to go all out with Gaza. I think they're trying to really flatten it and take over the land and kill as many as Palestinians as possible. And they're like even like drone striking aid workers, like even like this World Kitchen. Like they're just, they don't care. Like they don't care about the PR consequences because they're like, we're already at rock bottom, so it doesn't matter. Let's just do as much damage as we can and take over as much land as we can. That's like the scary situation because it means that more Palestinians are going to be slaughtered by these terrorists.
Has that strengthened your faith? What is your relationship with your faith? I don't see you speak about that as much, maybe just because it's not what I've seen. But has these debates and these conversations, has that made you a better Muslim?
Well, I try to always be a better Muslim. I have my wife and my kids, and it's very important, like when you have kids, to be a good example to them and really embody the values of a good Muslim. Because, even if you were kind of in a situation where, okay, in public, like you're completely legit, but then behind closed doors, like you slip, that when you get married and you have kids, like you can't continue that. You have to be legit outside and inside your own home. So that's what really encourages me, and I try to do my best so that I be a good example I have 5 boys, alhamdulillah, and I want them to be strong Muslims, strong warriors and be good Muslims and legit. So I'm
Mashallah,
trying to
5. Five is crazy. I mean, your wife must be disappointed after like 3 or 4. She wanted a daughter, but too bad.
Well, I wanted a daughter too, so.
Yeah, I know, it's too bad. I mean, are you going to keep? I don't want to ask you that, but I think my theory is that men who have a lot of boys, who have a lot of sons, they weren't womanizers, but the womanizers end up getting punished by Allah by having a bunch of daughters.
Maybe, Allahu Alam. But hey, Iftar just came in, or Maghrib just came in, so I have to go break my fast.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if you want to continue or you want to go continue the stream without me, but I can go and pray and be back in like 5-10 minutes. Or it's fine if that's all the time we have. No problem.
Do you have to go right now? Was there? I mean, we could end it right now and continue the conversation. Yeah, I mean, I do want to speak about Madhalis with you, but maybe I should do that when I'm not in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's actually better because we don't want to threaten your safety.
Okay, so it was great speaking with you. May Allah accept your fast, and it was great to meet you, man. I wanted let's do this conversation again soon because there's more that I want to ask you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure was all mine. And I just want to say I really appreciate your work, Sneako, because you have become Muslim and you've really embraced it, and we can all see like your efforts and your calling to Islam. You're inviting people, and it's really inspiring. A lot of Muslims, born Muslims, are finding inspiration from your work. So may Allah bless you and accept all your works. Keep struggling, brother, and we love you. So
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon, inshallah.
Love you too, for the sake of Allah.